Hey everyone, welcome to the moon forecast video for the new moon we have coming up at Cancer on July 17th. It's coming to us at 11:32 a.m. if you're on Pacific Standard Time. If you're on the East Coast, it is happening at 2:32 p.m. Eastern. So just be aware, make sure that you change the time for where you're at. This moon is full of that emotional, watery Cancer energy. And so before we jump right into it, I just want to give a little quick shout out. I'm Kendall with Bohemian Tarot Girl and Wild Reawakening. And my co-host here, Amy, give a shout out for yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm an intuitive energy coach, Moon Circle leader. Um, we always get together twice a month to do these moon energy videos for the new moon and the full moon. And I'm so excited to kind of dive into this one. There's so many layers and elements and endings and beginnings of cycles and planetary shifts that have happened right around this new moon. And so it's going to be really, really significant and one to really pay attention to and focus on so that you can kind of know what to expect as we move forward in the next coming months. So hope that you stick around and join us for the entire thing, but
Yeah.
we're really excited to be here.
And make sure to stay connected with us. We do a moon circle video as well with some activities like a guided meditation, journal questions. We have a workbook that goes along with it for both the new moon and the full moon. So make sure you stay below. There'll be a link below to our website where you can sign up for that and access the workbook there. So join us for that if you're interested in that piece of it, where you do a little more deep dive into the work portion of the energy with this new moon. So, Amy, how are you feeling about this new moon? It's very much that emotional side of it. And I think we're really going to evaluate the people that are in our lives during this time and evaluate, it can be our family, it can be our friends, however we would define those people that are close in our lives. So, what are you thinking is coming up with
Well,
that?
new moon energy, we typically look at as being a time when we, set our intentions and we think about the direction that we want our lives to move in and what feels good to us and what we want to create and what inspires us. And while that is happening, this is like so typical of all of the other moons that we've been having lately, where there's still that duality and there's still like this sense of closing out old things that is coming into play at the time that we're working on creating new things. And we had that last full moon in Capricorn, and we kind of talked about the shift away from a lot of that Gemini mental energy that was happening, where a lot of the energy was so many people were kind of like caught up in their heads and very mentally stimulated and having some mental anxiety and stuff. And now we're moving in to Capricorn, or not Capricorn,
Cancer.
Cancer. Um, and Cancer is, you know, ruled by the moon. So it already has that element of being very fluid and very feminine and very intuitive and a little more solitary and reflective. And having the sun and the moon in the same position in the sky as it is with these new moons, um, which this one is at 25 degrees of Cancer. So we're getting ready to shift into that Leo energy, which is going to be a big energetic shift and a big difference. Um, the last degrees of Cancer, it's already part of like closing out a cycle. And then we have all these other planets that are getting ready to shift, and that's going to be closing out more cycles. And so this energy is coming in, and it's like, okay, if we're getting ready to close out these cycles, in order for you to move into what's next, it's really important to get clear on what feels good to you and what um, where your emotions are at, and if you're using your emotions intelligently or if you're letting them get the better of you. Make sure that you're really focusing on what feels right, and that you're removing any of that existing mental chatter and
Mm.
getting clear on your emotional state. You know, it's also like when we keep talking about this. If you watch this for a few months, I have kept saying that I feel like the theme of this year is coming home to yourself.
Yeah.
And Cancer also has that kind of home and motherly element to it. And so it's like even focusing more like, okay, how can you come more home to yourself? And what does that feel like to you emotionally? And what do you want to emotionally invest in the future as you move forward? And is what you are creating or what you are moving towards even resembling the things that you really truly want within and deep down? Or are you just like staying stuck because it's what's comfortable and what you know and what
Mhm.
um you think you've already decided on, so you have to stick with.
Yeah.
um like you can keep holding on to something because you said you were going to, um but is it even looking like what it is that you really truly want to bring into your life at this point? And if it's not, then you have to be okay with deciding to let things go so that you can move towards the things that feel good for you.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was looking at this moon, it definitely came to mind that it's really giving you this time to really start with a clean emotional slate. So, this is your moment to clear out those pieces. And when I was looking into really the energy of the moon, it was a lot about us being able to figure out how to build safety and security in our lives. And I think that is that key message when we look behind all of the opposing pieces with this moon is really that it's giving us some clear boundaries that we want to explore with ourselves. It's really giving us the opportunity to reflect on how we can feel safe and really tie in our emotional state for ourselves and really start fresh because it's like you said, we are starting over this time for ourselves, and I think that is really key. It's important to note too, um this is how, if you look at your personal planets and you're within 21 to 29 degrees for cardinal signs Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, you pay really close attention to your emotions during this time and how they're interacting with you, because this is the time to reset and clear that out. So if that really closely relates in your chart, pay close attention to what's going on, your feelings during this time.
Yeah. And if you want to look at your personal chart and see where that 25 degrees of Cancer is happening, what house that is in, that can give you an idea of the part of your life that you may be feeling a little more influence in, and a little more what's the word I'm looking for? Just the part that may be more affected
Yeah.
during this time, where you may feel a little more emotion around, or it could be bringing up some more like things from the past that you feel like you've cycled around. And it's like, okay, how can you look at this now with a broader emotional awareness and a maturity that you have evolved into over the time since you were last circling this? Because everything goes in cycles. We talk about that all the time. um, you mentioned boundaries, creating boundaries during this time around your emotional needs. Cancer energy, because there's always a duality to every sign, and we like to talk about the good elements and the not so good elements. Cancer can have a tendency to look at everybody else's needs and kind of abandon their own. Um, and they enjoy taking care of people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But are they doing it out of duty? Are they doing it out of um, uh, being dismissive? Or is it like a distraction? Is it, you have to look at the reasons behind what the motivation is sometimes. And I think that this energy right now is also like, what is it that feels sacred to you? And how are you protecting that? And how are you making your own emotional needs a priority and getting clear on what it is that you truly want and what makes you feel worthy and worthwhile and loved and secure and safe, and making sure that the energy that you are putting into this during this moon, if especially if you're doing manifesting work, which we always recommend doing, or setting intentions, um, is that you're really focusing on your own internal emotional well-being and making those decisions based on whether or not the actions that you're doing are going to be in alignment with your own emotional landscape, in a positive way and not in a negative way.
We have the sun, and it's also in Cancer, and it's having this strong sextile to Uranus, and that in itself is really giving me that's that strong independent vibes. And so I think we're going to have this power really brought to ourself, with this energy, because we have our subconscious and our self really in this emotional state, and it's going to provide us this extra little boost here to really know who we are and to really seek the freedom that we want. It's really good for making new projects come about, making changes in your life. Just know that there might be some conflicts that come up, that maybe this new norm that you want for yourself, this new self that you want, really conflicts with how the rest of the world maybe thinks you should live. And so it's important during this time that you are really conscious of who, and the emotions you want to take on in this time, and who you want to be in the future, and that's where you need to focus your energy on. So just be aware that is a there's energy that's going to propel you into giving you new, and strong will to be who you want to be, but other people might be coming at you and expecting you to really, um, not go outside of the box that they have created for you. So just be aware of that as we go through this energy.
Yes. And there's so many other, it's never just about the sun and the moon, even though we come and we talk about moon energy.
Mhm.
There's so many other things that come into play during that time. And, the moon energy, it's usually a 3-day energy. So you have some time to kind of like work with that. But there are some really key things that are coming, and shifting right after this moon that you're going to feel the effects of pretty closely. One of the big things that is happening is that the North and the South Node are changing signs. And we kind of got a glimpse of that when we had the first eclipse on the Aries Libra axis, back in April. We talked about that. You could always revisit that video and see some more information on kind of how that eclipse affected things. But these nodes have not been in this position. We have Aries in the North Node and Libra in the South Node. And they have not been in this position for like 18 or 19 years. It's a very long cycle. So if you want to look back at like what transpired in your life between 2004 to 2006, when they were last in that position, you can get an idea of kind of some of the themes that were going on, that might come up, or you might realize that things that were initiated back then have come full circle and had closure recently. The nodes, do affect the eclipses. They so we will have a series over the next 18 months of eclipses in Aries and Libra. And if you want to look at the energies of that, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because that can be a really complex conversation. But Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it is about kind of being independent and being sure of yourself and finding yourself. And when we're in the North Node, that's kind of like the lessons and the faded things that we are leaning into. And so you may, as well as what Kendall was saying, about the other transit with Uranus, is that you could be developing a very much stronger sense of yourself, or of what you want, or what's important to you, and really like kind of coming into your own during this time. And then we have Libra, which is all about partnership. And that is about kind of like where you've been and what you've learned from those parts of your life, and utilizing that to kind of like move more towards a more independent whole self. I know when we talked about this at the eclipse, we talked about how kind of went into some of my past
Yeah.
experience with this thing.
You
But
need
it
to work
was like,
on that.
how can you also be in partnership with people while maintaining your sense of self? And do your partnerships, um, support you, or do they diminish who you want to become or who you are becoming? So these are things that may start coming up. Again, you can look at the houses in your own chart to make it more personalized and see the areas that might be lighting up energetically for you over the next 18 months. So
Yeah, I mean, this Aries energy, and then also this, with the Venus, we also have Venus retrograde, and it's this interesting conflicting energy that we have, because we have this very fiery Aries energy, like, the war energy. And then you have it paired with the Libra, who, or that Venus kind of energy is coming into a lot of things right now. And it's just very much this beauty and the love and the people that we have in our life. And it's very conflicting. And so I can see how people during this time are going to experience some conflicting emotions. Um, do you wanna talk about the Venus retrograde? Because I feel like that is one of the biggest things on my mind coming into this time. Yeah.
so Venus doesn't go retrograde very often. And it is going retrograde in Leo, and it is going to go retrograde on July 22nd.
Mhm.
It's going to not go direct until September 3rd. So we have this extended period, but we've also had this extended period of Venus being in Leo already, and it's going to backtrack over the territory it's already covered. And then when it goes direct, it's going to backtrack again. So it's going to be hitting some pretty key points over the next couple of months. And it's going to have this real extended stay in Leo. And Leo energy, it's kind of like what lights you up and what's your fire, and what, you know, it's another one of those energies of getting clear on what it is you want and what your heart wants and what your heart desires and what your heart needs. Um, I know, like, there's been, I'm in some astrology groups online, and there's been a lot of chatter of people talking about, like, why are all my relationships falling apart, or why does it feel like everything's hard right now, and there's so many endings happening. And I feel like that's been a theme of this year, but it's because we're really being asked during this time to figure out the direction that we really want to go, and what feels good and what feels in alignment. I feel like we've already said this today, but
Mhm.
it's worth repeating because it's something that's going to keep coming up. But also realizing that in order to create space for what it is that your heart and yourself and your soul and your spirit really wants and needs, you have to be willing to have endings and things. And
Yes.
so there's a lot of like, especially among younger people who haven't been through these cycles a few times, like maybe we have.
Take note,
The last
people, so you can remember this for next time.
the last time Venus was retrograde in Leo, because it doesn't go retrograde in every sign, which I just realized that, and I thought that was really interesting. But Leo is one of the signs that it does go retrograde in, and it hasn't been retrograde in Leo for 8 years. And so you may want to look back at 8 years and see what, in 2015, in the summer of 2015, when it went retrograde the last time, and look at maybe what was going on in your heart center, or in your, the Venus aspects. It could be your job, it could be a relationship. What was going on then? And look at how things have transformed for you since then, and look at how much you've grown and how much you've changed and evolved, so that you can, like, it's almost like closing out a cycle but also starting a new cycle. Um, and the other thing that I see a lot in Facebook groups recently, on inner astrology groups, is a lot of people talking about how Venus going retrograde is just going to make all these relationships go bad. And that you really need to look out because your relationship's in jeopardy. And really, that's not true. it'll give you a time to kind of like reassess and reflect, because that's what retrograde planets do. But it's also only going to create endings for things that are not meant to go forward, or things that are past their time, or things that just are no longer in alignment for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to have things end. Like, we don't need to hold on to everything.
Yeah, and with the Venus retrograde, I don't necessarily hold true to like not starting a relationship during this time either. I think if you are aligned and you're moving into a relationship with somebody that is aligned, it technically can be a good thing. I think you just need to be aware of when we do these, when we create these relationships in our lives, are we really aligning with that person because of they're on our true path. They're really connecting to our higher self and really coming with us on this, next level. Or are they a person that's revisiting you for a reason? Are they coming in because they're part of a past cycle? And they might be coming in as somebody who you haven't necessarily been with, but they're going to represent a person in your life. And so just being aware of traits that people have and why patterns ended in your life, and seeing those can give you some insight into your relationships. And so just be aware as you go through and be open to learning about relationships. And if you come into new relationships, be really aware of how they're moving forward and making sure that they're aligned with you. If they're not aligned with you, really look into, is it another cycle starting? Is it coming back around for you to close something out? Just be aware of what is going on in your relationships. I think that's really key to getting through this time period, is just being really hyper aware of your relationships and why they're in your life.
Yeah. And then the other like major kind of thing, you talked about the cardinal energies that are being lit up right now with the Cancer and the Capricorn. Because Capricorn is in Pluto. And so we have this opposition between the sun and the moon, with this Pluto and Capricorn that is in retrograde currently as well. And that is also like coming in. I mean, when Pluto and Capricorn, it's like the realist, and it's coming in to clear out old patterns, and it's coming out to remove things that aren't meant to go forward. I mean, we have so much of that energy happening right now. Um, and I think a lot of times, and I know we've talked about this before, is that the harder you try to hold on to things that you aren't meant to hold on to, you're more likely to end up in a situation where your world feels like it's crumbling apart, instead of just letting things be the way they're going to be. I know in tarot, which Kendall,
Mhm.
Bohemian Tarot Girl,
That's
is very
great.
and you should listen to her readings. But you have that Tower card, and it's like that Tower moment usually happens when you need something to change suddenly. And a lot of times I feel it's because you've been trying to hold on too tightly to things that aren't meant to serve your highest good. You have a whole spirit team working behind the scenes that you may not know about. You have contracts that you've created on directions that you're supposed to go in your life. And so trying to maintain things in a way that no longer feels right, or is not going to get you into the position that you need to be to, have your soul's purpose fulfilled, you are creating so much resistance for yourself that doesn't need to be there.
Mm.
um
Oh, I'm
Pluto is also a long transiting planet, and Pluto and Capricorn also is like your foundation, um, is that energy. And so this could be coming in and bringing up a lot of, I don't want to say maybe woundings, but maybe just like ideas that were solidified in your younger years about who people should be to you, or how, people should show up for you, or, um, you know, how you view the world from a very young, um, survivalist standpoint. I want to say, like, we create our patterns, based on things that happen in our childhood. And so this kind of moon might come in and highlight some of these structures that we've kind of put in place for ourselves, as being like, well, this is how it is. And it might show you like, well, maybe that's not how it is for you anymore. Maybe you have moved through that and gained a greater awareness and understanding of, the people in your world, or your relationship dynamics, or what makes you feel safe and secure. And so um, just pay attention to what comes up for you during that time, because there's a lot that can be cleared out with this new moon, um, and with that energy as well, because we talked about the sun and the moon in Cancer, and then Pluto in Capricorn, and then we talked about the north and the south node, which are also moving into cardinal signs. That happens on the 22nd, I believe. Check my notes. 21st. So they move into the other cardinal signs, the other two, which are Libra and Aries. And that is forming this, what they call a grand cross, because in the chart, it's going to like form a grand cross because they're all in square to each other. um, and oppositions and squares, we get a grand cross. And so that is like just giving you like the opportunity to look at yourself from an empowered place, look at the person that you want to become, and that is very centered and grounded and authentic, and like I said, empowered, like standing in your highest element, and look at cycles that are ending around that, or that have prevented you from moving in that direction. So there's a lot there's a lot that's transpiring with this moon, and these are energies that you should be aware, because it's not comfortable, especially big changes, big realizations about who you are and how you show up in the world, and maybe around realizations around the people who you've been traveling with in life, that they are no longer an energetic match for you, and there can be some like grief and heaviness, and even like, I want to say anger, but it's not really anger. It's it's like a realization of ways that you have not honored yourself.
Well, in
So
general, like anger is connected to sadness. And so it's just a way we express feelings that we're not able to process. And so you think about that. So if you do feel anger, and you really have to dig down deeper and figure out if it's sadness that you're feeling from this transition. And I definitely like to look at this world that we live in, that we do live in these cycles, and that we rotate through cycles until we either kick ourselves off of the cycle and are able to move on to a different cycle within our lives, or we are waiting for the universe basically just to kick us off and have that tower moment, in order to transition us into a new place. And so, with that, Amy had mentioned there is a sense of loss and sadness that you can have because you are moving on to a different chapter. And it's not necessarily something that it's okay to feel those feelings. Definitely feel, that you can express sadness, you can have sadness in this transition in your life. If you experience anger, really dig down deeper in that to really get to what is really causing that anger within you. But it's okay to experience sadness. That's a natural part of the transition as you're going through. So don't feel like, if that is something that's coming up for you, honor that and be thankful and look back at the lessons you've learned, where you've come from. These people, since we're talking about the relationships in our lives during this time and its connection to our emotional state, honoring that, these people have given us an experience in order for us to grow and become the person that we want. I think that's the way I try to look at things, is I always try to bend it in a light where I can see the benefit it has brought to us. We don't have to think, oh, I lived in this relationship and it wasn't great for me. There was an experience involved that was something that you could take a piece of and learn from it in order to grow. So just don't think negatively about the cycles that you're breaking and changing from. Just really focus on what you've learned and give thanks and move forward with them. So
And in relationship, just to say, in relationships,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about love relationships. This can be relationships with family, be relationships at work, it could be relationships with friends, it could be relationships with, your children. So, we enter into relationships and contracts and cycles with people, for these experiences all the time. And so we just pay attention to where it's showing up for you and try not to attach yourself to a certain outcome and recognize that this is not something that's happening in a mental level or even in a physical level. It is all in an internal emotional place that this moon is coming from. And so you're going to be feeling this very introspectively and very emotionally within your body and your heart center. And you may feel like isolated. I mean, people deal with things in a different way for each person. You may like want to be avoidant and go off and be the life of the party somewhere, but your internal landscape is still going to be processing all of this. You may be someone who just wants to curl up and hide in your room for the 3 days that this moon is transpiring. No matter how you process it, it's okay as long as you're recognizing that something important is transpiring within yourself and your emotional field.
Mhm. Yes. I mean, this is
There's a reason.
really, yeah, this is really echoed through this transit too. So I feel like it's such an important theme because we look at like every little piece when I'm looking at the transit and I'm looking at the moon and semi-sextile to Venus. And that is very much that same message. You might be reluctant to move forward in a relationship because of a fear, but you really need to. It's really about you moving away and cultivating the relationships that you want and the life that you really want. So just be aware of that it's echoing throughout this whole space and time during this new moon, and to really not resist the change, uh, and to resist, the energy of letting go. And that is the most important part, I think, is when we're looking at our emotions and the emotions that are tied to others, is we need to figure out which ones we want to keep and which ones we want to let go of during this time.
Yeah. And part of like just to kind of look at the other side of that with this energy that's coming in is it is a new moon. It is about setting intentions and focusing on the future. And so the more clear you can get during this time around what feels good and right and important to you and the direction you want to go in, the easier it is, I think it is going to be when something comes into your awareness of something you've been holding on to that doesn't line up with that anymore.
Mhm.
And that it's okay, like if that doesn't line up anymore for you, and that it's okay to let it go and let it be what it is. So, because you're creating this space in your life for what it is that you truly want to come in. Um, so,
Yes,
get
I love
clear.
that. Totally get clear.
Focus on the direction that you're moving in, not in, holding on to where you've been.
Yes. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we end it?
I don't think so. I think
I
I
feel
covered it all.
Yeah, I feel like even if I walk through the different like aspects in the chart, it all comes down to that same message. And so it was very much a very clear and direct message along that line. So everybody clear out your stuff, and we will see you hopefully for the moon circle that we have coming up for this new moon. So we will see you all next time. Thank you again, and make sure to follow us at Wild Reawakening. Thanks everyone. Bye.